This episode is sponsored by Victory Grips. Victory Grips are the standard in hand protection, plus they just launched their new gym affiliate program. As affiliate owners, they understand the demands of gym owners. Their goal is to keep their gym referral program process as simple as possible. You'll receive educational content, early access to upcoming releases, and exclusive discounts for your members, plus received a percentage of the net sales. Find out more at victorygrips.com. Welcome to the Power Monkey Podcast, where we chat with the best in the world about what they do. I'm your host, Dave Durante, with my co-host, Mike Service, and on today's episode, we have Rika Geyser. Rika is absolutely adored by all of us within Power Monkey for a variety of reasons. Not only is she an outstanding athlete, having competed at the Beijing Olympics in 2008 in the women's single sculls rowing event, but she also competed twice as an individual athlete at the CrossFit Games, and one of my favorite bio highlights, she competed at the University of Washington, where she not only won 2 NCAA championships, but her team was also named Pac-12 Team, not of the year, not of the decade, but of the century. Such an incredible achievement. I always love pointing that out. Team of the century. We've been lucky enough to have her out as a coach at Power Monkey Camp for a number of years, but with her living in South Africa and the pandemic hitting, it's been a while since we've been able to see her in person. Recently, she attended one of our Power Monkey retreats out in Crete, and we picked up right where we left off. She's an incredible coach and an even better person, and Rika was able to give me and Mike some tips on our rowing technique, which we are both grateful for and very much in need of. So thank you again, Rika, for being with us, and we hope you guys enjoy this one. Well, Rika, it's so good to see your face again. We were lucky enough to have you out in Crete, Greece with us after a long hiatus of working together. And before we get into that adventure, just in terms of teaching and what Crete was like, there was something that came up on the last podcast while we were shooting in Greece, and I wanted your thoughts on it. It had to do with the lovely badger that showed up, because I think all of us at Power Monkey are sure that you summoned the badger to us, and we wanted to get a little bit of your take on how that all happened, because you definitely brought it up earlier in the week, and then suddenly there was a badger at our villa. How'd that come about?
Well, I think it was me and Jordan that was talking about the South African trip that he was here a couple of years ago, and we were discussing elephants, and he has this beautiful elephant photo that I think he maybe gave to Heidi or Chris Hinshaw or something like that. And then we got into the elephant keeper, I think, about the books and the intelligence of elephants and things like that. And then somebody asked, like, if you were to be an animal, which one would you pick? And I was like, oh, elephants, they are so cool. You know, they're soft. And one of my clients was fortunate enough to be part of, they darted the elephant because there was something wrong with the tooth, and they fixed the tooth, and she was a part of it. And the ways that she explains the smell of the elephant and how soft the trunk was, the nose, yeah, the trunk is. So I was like, oh, elephant, I want to be the elephant, like calm and wise and things like that. And I was like, oh, but the lions, of course, are so good. And then there's whales. And I keep having the badger pop up in my mind. I'm like, oh, those guys are weird, man. They're fierce, they're aggressive. In South Africa, we even have a military vehicle called after them. In Afrikaans, it's called a ratel. And we call it a ratel tie. So he's as tough as a badger. So I'm like, it's just part of the game. I'll just pick badger. I think Jordan almost fell off the bench. I was like, a badger? Why is that? It's so aggressive. It was like, that's part of the game. It showed up. And then probably 2 or 3 days later, Mike is training and he has his earpods in, I don't know, preparing for some podcast or something. And I was going to come and train. And it's like, okay, Mike, it's fine. I'm just going to train. We don't have to chat. And I go and fetch a kettlebell, and I see this, what I thought was a Grease wild dog lying, sleeping there. Because in South Africa, we have dogs that, long hair and furry and weird looking, but I couldn't see its face. I'm like, oh, tell Mike. Maybe the Greek dogs are looking like that as well. And he's like, oh, I don't think it's a dog. And he's like, well, I don't know what it is. But I was quite excited about it because I could see this beautiful paw. I don't know how to describe it other than just
it was
being
gigantic.
Really
It was big though.
It was, but there's just something about the paw. It wasn't like that it had big nails or that it was vicious looking. It was just, there was some real presence in that paw. And I was like, I don't think it's a wild dog or a dog at all. So I'm like, but it's exciting things to happen. So he went to fetch one of his friends that is Greek and lived there, and was between the language barrier, nobody could really figure it out until Google helped us with, and Mike's eyes just went big. It's like, it's a badger. Oh, move away. These things are aggressive. And it's like, well, what do we do with it? Do we try and poke it and get it out? And it was just curled up, beautifully curled up there in the rope. And
on top of the rope, yeah.
Yeah, I almost felt a bit jealous because it looked like he was having such a great sleep. Not fazed by three people staring and whispering, what do you think, guys? It's sick. What should we do? Should we pick it up? Should we wake it up? And let's just leave it. So I was super excited, and I immediately phoned one of my friends when we finished the training session that the badger showed up, and she was equally excited. So she's a Sangoma, which is, I guess, like a shaman. So in the Black cultures, we call the shamans the Sangoma. And so we were talking about the kind of the spiritual connection to it and what does it mean and things like that. So shall we call me what? The badger summoner. I don't know, but it was really excited for me and kind of part of playing the game, and like, which animal would you be? It's all just part of playing games and then seeing what comes up with that.
You will forever be the badger to us now. That's it. It's part of who you are. Even though you're a husky, as you're showing your W on your jersey right now, your Washington heritage, you'll always be a badger to us. We did find out that it's nocturnal, right, Mike? So it was kind of just sleeping in there, and we kind of just left the door open, and it shimmied out at night and left Mike with a bunch of little poops to clean up. Yeah, unfortunately, but
I don't know if it was so little.
Yeah, it left some very gigantic scat all over. But I like to think that the badger was just kind of like Rika said, like feeling our nice power monkey energy of, everyone's welcome, and it's a safe place to just chill. And if you need to take a nap, then go for it.
Yeah, come be yourself.
Yeah.
And so
if you want to sleep during the day, that's fine.
Exactly. Some of us end up doing that anyway. Sleep right through the sessions. That's what Greece is all about. Just enjoying being out there. And Rika, this is the first time we've had you out to Crete with us, but we've missed you for a number of years. Post-pandemic, we haven't been able to get you out to camp, and you living in Cape Town area has made it much more challenging for us to see each other on a more regular basis. So we were grateful to have the opportunity to catch up over the course of basically 2 weeks. Came out a little bit early and caught the tail end of our first group. And what were your first impressions of just being at the Crete location, spending some time and seeing everybody again?
Sure. It was quite emotionally overwhelming for me. As you said, I haven't seen you guys in so long, and Zoom calls and WhatsApp and Instagram videos, only brings connection to so much. I was very happy that I could see Chris Henshaw and Heidi and Linda that I've met at a few of the previous camps. I'm just going to blame it on the jet lag and that I didn't sleep well, but I was really quite teary-eyed seeing everybody. As we speak, it is a Power Monkey family. Whether you are a participant, whether you're part of the staff, whether you're a coach, and it really feels like I came home. And it doesn't really feel like I haven't seen you guys for so long. It's just we picked up and off we go. The retreat itself.
Before you jump from there, I think that's part of your personality because, you came in on the Friday and all the other participants from that first week had been together for essentially a full week. You came in that Friday night, and by the time everyone left a day and a half later, you had become like incredibly close with all of the other participants that you had just met. And so like, that group, not just the Linda who we had met at camp, but the other participants that you met for the first time, you had created such a strong connection with. And I think that's kind of part of your personality. You are able to connect with people at such a strong level very, very quickly. Do you feel like that's part of who you are? Or do you feel like kind of the environment allowed for that to happen?
It's difficult for me to say that's who I am. I think there are groups that I connect easier with, and then there's other groups where it doesn't matter how many times we see each other for how many years. I don't think there's going to be a connection. And it's something that I speak with some of my other friends in South Africa. It's like, how do you manage to get a certain type of person to come to camp or to retreat? Or I haven't been to any of the 2-day courses, but it really feels like it's a specific person or personality type. It's not, I can't even think of examples of really, it's like, it's not these ones, but it's those ones. So it makes it easy to connect. I think I was maybe also a bit hungry for a social environment, although I do describe myself as a loner. Like, I can live up here at the dam for a really long time and not see anybody. Just go and hike by myself on the mountain and go and run a single. I think after many years, I've become a total single sculler, where you're just quite happy doing things by yourself. But I do enjoy the social encounters when I do have the opportunity for them as well.
I don't know if anybody got the subtle reference there, the single scholar. Go ahead, Rika. Give our novice listeners what is that?
A single scull? It's the boat that you row by yourself. It's mostly where they put the difficult ones. You just go off in the single. Go figure it out by yourself.
And Rika, for as long as I've known you, that was actually a new story for me, from when you came from being a rower on full teams, and then your experience of having to go solo just because, right?
Yeah, well, it's either you go solo or you don't go at all. So where do you want to go? And South Africa is a really small rowing country. And I learned how to row in the States. And of course, I rowed for 4 years at the University of Washington, and I did sweep rowing. There's some more rowing terminologies. Sweep rowing is where you row with one blade and you row on a specific side. So for me, my blade was on my left side. We call it starboard side, bow side, or just on your left. And then when you go to sculling, you have 2 blades, one in each hand. So that's not the way to do it. You want to start with sculling and then move over to sweep. Of course, I went from sweep to sculling. So with sculling, your hands actually cross, and that's how the boat is set up. And now you hold it with a different grip. And I would so often and my thumbs would just be jammed. So that's basically, I put the car back into reverse so you can unstuck your thumbs and row. So it was a difficult switch to, for South Africa, we've made some A finals at World Champs, some medals at World Cup in the pair, and then suddenly in the single, you get beaten by the under 14C single sculler because your thumbs get stuck. That was quite a lesson in humility and frustration, that you can't muscle everything. It's that the boat takes real skill. And I think it's almost more personality thing than a skill thing. I think single scullers are cut from, I don't know what they cut from, but it's different.
I feel like, Dave, that experience for Rika when she went to the Olympics would be like you showing up and then your coach being like, Dave, you know what? You're going to do balance beam. And if you don't do it, you don't get to compete. Sorry. Like,
yeah, perfect. Yeah. That's why Rika is the professional that she is. And her ability to kind of on the fly, just say, this is part of the deal. And, I don't know how many listeners out there know your whole athletic history. It's pretty in depth, and we can go through some of it. But along with your incredible rowing achievements, you also went to the CrossFit Games and you competed as an individual, as a CrossFit athlete. Which, Rika, do you know of any other high-level rower that has ever competed in the CrossFit Games, as far as you know?
I think there were a couple on teams, but I'm not too sure.
Because it is a
Yeah.
particular body type, right? Just like you're not going to see a male gymnast too often. You know, you get an Alex Smith every once in a while that kind of has some crossover. You're kind of opposite end of the spectrum when it comes to, you know, where your strengths lie. You need kind of be that generalist, but, you know, you being able to compete at that highest of level just as a testament to your athletic ability, but also the ability to say, hey, if you're putting me in the single, even though I'm an 8-person on the left kind of a rower, I'm going to be able to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when you get to the T junction, like, well, which you only have the two choices. I guess the third choice was to change countries and go for another passport. But at that stage, I really wanted to row for South Africa. And I think that decision, the one day I'm like, oh, that was maybe not such a good idea. You probably would have had some medals in your pocket if you decided to row for another country. And then the other day, I'm like, it was a really good idea because the journey that I went through while I was rowing for South Africa is very different than any of my university teammates. So it's like, well, which one is more valuable, the gold medal or the journey? It's like, well, sometimes the journey and sometimes the gold medal.
Yeah, I mean, I've never had a medal that has surpassed the experience that's come along with it, or the people that have kind of accompanied me on those journeys. And I think most people, you'll find that same thing. You know, it's about the people that you did it with. It's about the experiences that come along the way rather than the medals. I mean, unless you're Fabian, who has, you know, the gold medals that go along with like the incredible experience. Most of my medals are in like a box somewhere. You know what I mean? And the things that I always retell are the stories that come along with the experiences. You know, who I was with, what did we do to be able to get to that level. Those are the things that really resonate.
Exactly. And I think it puts a different spin on you as a coach.
From what perspective?
Yeah. That it's more about the experience, the journey that you walk with this athlete versus getting a fast time, heavy lift. And especially the people that I work with, I don't work with necessarily high level athletes that want to win the Olympics. It's just like I love rowing. I like to be outside. I want to do that. Or people come to camp. Their brains are already fried by Wednesday because there's so much information. So I go, well, if I'm going to give more information about rowing, probably both of us will have a meltdown because their brains are full. And so what is the experience? How do I connect to somebody so that I can still say, oh, the rowing station was really enjoyable? It's like, well, I can't really remember what much I learned about the drag factor or arms body slide, but it was a really enjoyable session.
Rika, I think,
yeah, that's super important. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I think when we started, you were talking about being a little bit of a loner, or, you know, figuring out what types of people you connect with. And then you said it just seems like when you come back to the Power Monkey family, whatever it is, camp, now the retreat, there's just that feeling of connection. And I think that's the type of person that has gravitated to our community now for 10 years, are people that are open to experiences and wanting experiences. So we still get, you know, a lot of, let's say, higher level athletes or people that still have goals to achieve, but at the same time, I think those are secondary to not just us as coaches and Power Monkey staff members, but as the participants to our events, we come looking for those new connections, those old connections, and then the experiences that lead us to wherever as you said, the journey goes. And then sometimes that will lead to PRs, whether they're, 500-meter rowing PRs or 1K rowing PRs, or, new gymnastic skills unlocked or weightlifting PRs. But those are so, at least in my mind, secondary or accessory to the bigger picture that has been really fun to see from all the coaches. And having you in Crete for me, and we were talking about it a lot, during and after, was just a reminder of, like, how amazing you are as a coach, of course, like that's just understood, but the vibe and the aura and just the overall goodness that you brought to the group, it just fit right into like what we wanted. And I think, like Dave said, we hadn't seen you for so long, and we knew that, and we knew we missed you. And yeah, maybe you were a little misty-eyed from the jet lag and arriving late, but I think we all were a little bit too once we just got a hug from you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Mike is such a lovely person, isn't he? I mean, the love that emanates from Mike is just unbelievable at times. But Rika, I want to just touch on a little of the coaching style that we got to experience a little bit. Both Mike and I, sat in on a little bit of a session with you, and in the past, we've been able to get some tips. Both Mike and I are never going to become Olympic level rowers. If you haven't noticed, my stature doesn't really allow for that kind of thing to happen. But you seem to have changed a little bit of style from even maybe the last time that you were working with us at camp. And there were some things that you were presenting to Mike and I that I know for Mike had like some really immediate benefits. And you can talk about what the change in technique, but I'm curious more about this idea of maybe the things that we've been doing forever. We'll talk about this, just evolving as a coach and saying that there might be some new methods, some new things that we can learn along the way, and then impart rather than just saying the way that we learned it is the correct way. We're just passing it on to the next generation. So for you, do you feel like you're constantly learning as you become, a more prominent coach and continue to work with people? Are you constantly trying to impart these new techniques and new tweaks to the people that you're working with?
I am constantly studying something. I sometimes even go to courses. I don't really like what they do, but they have some successes, or the way that they lift, but I don't know enough, and I'm gonna go and see what they're up to. So then I learn more about their method, and I learn more about my method and where do I stand. At the moment, I'm doing a fascial course because there's some things that are in my body that I cannot explain and how it works. And I see certain things in other people's body. I'm like, I don't know how it works, but I would like to know more of fascia, and see how you can get more position or more energy or no, that doesn't out of that. And that was also one of the things why I was so excited about coming to Crete, because of the book Natural Born Heroes, which is one of my favorite books. It's the guy that wrote the Barefoot Runner. Is it Christopher McDougall? And he wrote about how those guys run. And I have seen it as well with one of the farm workers. He was a tiny little guy, skinny, carrying a roll of barbed wire, weighing about 60 kilos, which is probably more than what he weighed. And he carried it up a mountain. He slung it over his one shoulder. He's smoking a cigarette in the other one, and he's walking up the mountain. It's just in kind of a leather chandelier type of thing. And the rest of us are walking with hiking shoes. We have a backpack with water, and we are sucking air like we haven't done anything in the last, 10 years of training. So I'm like, how does this work? How does this guy, he's so smooth between jumping on rocks, and we all looking like clumsy elephants. The elephants are not clumsy, but how, like, we just look clumsy walking up there. So like, there's something else. It's not just because we're all fit and strong. So what else is there? So that led me to the fascia thing. And also doing some rotational movement things. So you was seeing if I was swinging my rope, I'm playing with that. So I'm always looking for something. I'm fascinated by learning. I've also done some trauma work and see how that fits into the body. And then
what was that, trauma?
Trauma, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
You grew up in a household, and then a tornado came, and then you had to rescue your mother, or there was some family abuse, any trauma that goes and sits in the body that people can't necessarily explain or deal with. So look at not necessarily just childhood trauma, but with the immediate family, how you position and the way you are situated in the family and how that affects your body. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and so you're taking like that and then applying it to the way that you're coaching, essentially, just to kind of maybe get a deeper understanding of person that you're working with, maybe not so much from a technical perspective, but more as a holistic perspective.
Yes, because you can say the same coaching cue to 5 different people and you'll get a different understanding, a different response. Sometimes it works to really push somebody. Sometimes it helps to explain something by words. Sometimes you just need to give the person time to figure it out. Sometimes you need to demonstrate. Sometimes you need to engage with somebody else. So I might, to explain something to Mike, or I want Mike to get a specification cue, I might speak to Jordan, because I feel it's easier. Mike doesn't necessarily like to be engaged directly. He likes to observe and then feel, and then 2 days later will come with a question. So I try and read the bodies and see how does people respond. I can sometimes get a change in technique just by coming to stand next to somebody, where explaining it or demonstrating it wasn't getting the cue.
So there's a psychological component to it. Who is this person beyond just their movement patterns, to be able to dive a little deeper in how can I connect with this person? It comes back to you being able to really connect with people like we saw early on in Crete. That's almost like a primary tenet to your coaching technique. I need to know who this person is rather than just how they move.
Well, are those two things different? If you think like you are tired, you are sunburned, you haven't seen, so for Dave, you haven't seen Sadie and the kids in 3 weeks. Now your flight got cancelled, you don't have a new flight, you are hungry. What is that body going to look like at that moment? Well, it's going to look different when it's like, woohoo, I just got upgraded to business class. I'm flying direct to the West Coast. Sadie, I'm going to surprise Sadie. She doesn't know I'm already, like, that body type is going to be different. So is the person and the movement pattern different? Or is it not the exact same thing? I'm going to engage differently with your workout if your flight got cancelled, you're sunburned, you're tired, and you're hungry, versus you feeling on top of the world.
Rika, I think that's yeah, you're sorry, David. You're offering such a good lesson for, I wouldn't say new coaches, old coaches, anything, like just people in general, is our relationships, specifically us as coaches with other people, are or should be very much about them. So I think we come in a lot of times with our content and our technique and everything that we want to go over. But everybody that we're working with also has, a posture that they're at in terms of everything that you've just explained. So for effective coaches to be most effective, I think looking at people with a little broader lens and then fitting in what we want to fit in where it's appropriate can be such a skill in itself. And that's what, you were saying too, Dave, is just Rika's ability to connect and read people is so, I think, unique and special, but it's also this willingness to do that, like a desire to really look deeper on people. So I think for everybody that's listening, that's such a valuable tool to take just in relationships in general.
I have another question there, because my coach was able to do that. And I've definitely talked about this on podcasts in the past, just being able to look at the individual, right? You have a team of 20 guys and you have a program that you set for the 20 guys. And when Monday morning hits, that program ends up being 20 different programs according to what's going on in each individual's minds that particular morning. And a great coach is able to do that on the fly, right? is able to make the adjustments according to the personality that they have in front of them. And when I saw my coach do that, I said, I don't have the ability. I don't have that in me. And I always looked at him and said, he could basically read my mind. And I was like, I don't think I'll ever be able to coach at that level because I don't have that innately in me to be able to understand what this athlete needs beyond just a technical cue. Like, yeah, I can give you more technique. I can give you the cue that I think might be helpful in the situation. Do you think that this is something that is learned by the courses that you're doing, by just spending more time and being more in tune with the person? Or do you think this is something that a person has to maybe just innately have within them?
Yeah, is it like a talent, like you're born with a great voice and you can sing, but you still have to do the training? Or is it some people can actually train to get a good voice, but will they ever be as good as the person with the talent and the hard work? Sure. I wonder if there's not also a personality trait of the coach coming into it, that can you sometimes just say, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to go with this, and almost get guidance from the athlete. So I sometimes explain the way that I work for people, that I'm just the mirror for you. So, hey Dave, you have spinach in your teeth, and you're like, this one. I'm like, none of the other teeth. This, and then you mention, like, here's the mirror. Have a look and then scratch the spinach out so that you can see, because you have more connection with that. So like the mirror, for a mirror to be really successful, you need to be clean. So you need a kind of a spiritual part of it and a physical part, so that you can give guidance on how to move, but also cleaning on the inside. So some personality things that's not so great for a coach to sneak in there. Also, let's say if the mirror is bent, or some mirrors make you look really wide and some make you look really skinny, and some is kind of rusty at the back end. So that's kind of what I'm trying to be for most of the people that I work with. I don't work at the moment with anybody that says I want to go and win the Olympic medal. I'm not sure if I'm able to do that, because if I look at my body and many other Olympic athletes' bodies, the bodies are a total mess after that. And I feel that the way that I coach now is to say, do no harm, or first do no harm. Like, if I know calluses are important, but do you need to rip your hands into blisters for rowing? So at some point you'll get a blister, but that's not necessarily the goal. We're not just going to laugh it off and say it's part of the sport. I also look at my mental state after I retired from the Olympics, and that was a very dark space at all. And then you think, oh, it's because I didn't have the greatest experience, or I didn't win the medal that I wanted. And you look at athletes that has won gold medals or had really great experience, and like, after the Olympics, they're also in a pretty dark place. So if somebody comes to me and say, hey, can you help me go to the Olympics? It will be a little bit of a tricky situation for me. So can you do that? And I think it might be possible to not have a wrecked body or a wrecked heart coming after that. But for the most part, people are interested in, I want to compete because I like it, it's social, my kids are rowing, I want to be able to spend time outdoors, it's a social thing. So then for me, it's very important to make sure that their bodies are healthy. So we sacrifice a little bit of speed or a little bit of power, but we gain a whole lot of days that is pain-free and people just feeling overall good.
I understand that. And I think both Mike and I and most of our team feel the same way about the type of client, athlete, participant that comes to our events is more about finding the love for the movement rather than, the achievement of saying I'm going to the Olympic Games or trying to win an Olympic gold medal. But everything that you're saying here, Rika, is about connection between person, athlete, coach. And before I even mention this additional question, I'd like to say that from my perspective, I think maybe I haven't been able to achieve the level of my coach in terms of being able to read people, but what has allowed all of us, I think, to be able to connect so well with the participants is that we care. And I think that's such a big component in being able to make changes for people, even if you don't have that innate ability to read what's going on in the person's background, or the way that maybe you can, Rika, is that all of us really care about the people that we work with. If you take the time to want to come to Crete or come to camp or come to one of our courses, we appreciate you giving up time and being with us. And we understand that time is the one thing you do not get back. And we all are very present, and we care deeply about that time that we have together. And I think that allows us to be able to connect with people in a deeper way. So even if we don't innately have it, that ability to care matters. The thing I was asking about you is, you seem to be a little bit of a loner. Like you said, I like to be on my own, and I'd prefer to be in that single these days. But you also have a deep desire to connect with people. And a lot of your coaching, especially as we saw in Crete, is virtual at this point. You seem to coach a lot through virtual classes and maybe not as much in person. Do you miss the ability to work with people in person, or do you kind of keep your distance and you enjoy the way that you have it right now? It just seems like there's this piece of you that loves that human connection, but also a part of you that likes to turn the switch and says, I really enjoy just being by myself. How do you kind of match up those two?
Well, I think that's one of my big struggles, is to how to find the balance between the two. I really enjoy the in-person coaching, especially when it's a group. You can just engage so much differently with a group in person than on Zoom. I took on the position of head coach at one of the high schools here in Somerset West. I was there for a couple of months, and I loved working with the kids. It was high school, so from grade 8, kind of grade 9 to grade 12. I worked mostly with the older kids. I had some assistant coaches working with the young kids. And I really, really enjoyed it, because that was also one of the first things kind of after the lockdown that I got to do in person. It was really nice being out on the water, and the engagement with the kids at that teenage stage of their life was something that I haven't done much before. And when I resigned from that position, I was just shattered, heartbroken it almost felt like playing. It's like I go to the playground and I get to kick around the balls with the kids, which we sometimes did. We kicked ball and we played games. Mm-hmm. Because one of my things were like, the kids are, it's a highly academic high school, so the kids are just studying. And we don't get to play anymore. So sometimes when the water wasn't good enough, we just kick ball and we throw pens around, and I made up games. So I do enjoy the in-person coaching, but I can get to a position where I'm like, okay, now you have to close the curtains, close the door, turn off every single light, the fridge, anything that makes noise, and I just hide out for 3 days. So one of my challenges is like, don't go to a space where you have to shut everything down for 3 or 4 days. Just push to 80% and then pull back for half a day, and then go out and come back in. With online, I also now really enjoy the online, because I can get to work with people that's not living around the corner from me. And I was grateful for the clients that I worked with at that stage, because they were very patient with me to switch from in-person coaching to online coaching. And it's a completely different coaching style, and it took me a long time. I remember the first 3 or 4 months, I would go to bed around 6 because my brain was just fried to be able to make the adjustments from in-person to online. I also started doing online rowing classes, which is something that I never thought would even really work. And I think doing the online rowing classes has made me a much better coach and a much better athlete. And probably out of all my things, I think those were the most successful, even though it was like, all right, on Monday we're doing online rowing class, and people ask me what it is, and I'm like, I have no idea. We just like, we're starting on Monday. Sign up now if you want the spot. That type of thing. And that's how I got to my new, I'll call it new, different way of teaching the rowing stroke.
Ooh, that's where I wanted to get into next. I wanted to talk about this because this is where we got to spend some time. And you first initially did it with Mike. So maybe Mike can give his experience and you can go into some of the technical points of the stroke and some of the things that you've really honed in on as being some markers for people that maybe aren't aware of what you've changed. Would you mind mentioning a little bit of what you passed along to Mike and then to me while we were in Crete together?
Rika, do you want me to give the hook for everybody and then you can go into the deeper meaning?
You'll become as tough as a badger when you row like that?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, so
Okay.
When working with Rika, if you just listen to her for about 30 seconds, you'll go from rowing at like a 143, 500 pace to about a 127. And then you'll look down and see the
That's
number.
you, Mike. I'm nowhere
I'm going to put
rowing.
everybody for everybody. This is, everybody. But no, really, when Rika was working with me, it was crazy because she was just having me make, subtle little changes and then connecting what I was doing to what I'm familiar doing, which is weightlifting, and extending my hips and different things like this, and playing with tempo and grip and probably a lot of the things that people would assume. But really it was like I don't know, a few hundred meters in, and I looked and saw the pace and thought, oh my gosh. And I wasn't dying, like out of breath. Nothing felt overly fatigued. And it was a really cool experience. So I was already excited. This was before the retreat even started, like telling everybody I can't wait for them to like sit and work with Rika, the ones who had already worked with her, like just that you guys are going to get something even more than you had before. And then the new people, like just be ready. So that was my hook for you, Rika.
Very good. Yeah, and I have it on video, the last one, the one that you rode in that little alleyway.
Well, that was me trying to innovate the techniques of rowing moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Would it work if your hair is loose? That would look really cool.
Ooh, it would look awesome, I think.
That's a shampoo commercial right there for sure.
Yeah.
But I want to dive into those technical pieces because they were unique. They were unique, and it was the first time I had heard some of them. So Rika, would you mind just telling the audience a little bit about some of these little changes that you made into the stroke?
So when I learned how to row, and I heard it quite a couple of times in the rowing world, is that they say the reason why people struggle so much with the rowing stroke is because it's a really unnatural movement. The sequencing doesn't make sense. You have to actively learn it. It's not like babies roll over onto their stomachs and then they crawl and then they walk and then they jump and things like that. So I kind of went along with it because I'm not necessarily known for my technical abilities in the rowing world. I'm more known for my muscle. That's why I sit in the middle of the 8. You close your eyes, and when we need more power, we call on the middle 4 and off you go. So I'm like, okay, yeah, because technique is incredibly difficult for me. It doesn't come naturally. And then during lockdown, me and Cheryl would text each other a lot, and I would ask her about weightlifting questions, and she would ask about rowing questions. And I still make fun of myself that I can snatch more from the hang position than I can snatch from the ground. And I'm like, so why is that? How does that come into play? And why is rowing still referred to as an unnatural movement? Because if you've been to some of my clinics, you know that I also demonstrate different versions of the clean so that people can connect to the rowing stroke and the clean. So I took it one step further. Like, it's not just a clean, it is a squat clean or squat snatch. So what do most of us struggle the most? Getting the bar off the ground or getting underneath the bar? Right? So most of us do kind of a hang clean power front squat type of thing. Or the giraffe, when you go underneath, you don't go off your hip, but you just spread really wide. And there can be a couple of reasons for that. But the thing for me is that it's a double hip hinge, right? So with the squat, call it the clean, the hips open and the hips need to close very quickly. And I'm getting really nervous because there's a really good Olympic lifter here. But it's the difficult part is to get underneath it. So when we work on rowing, the difficult part is kind of the body preparation, getting the shoulders in front of the hips. So if you're sitting on the rowing machine, your legs are straight. You want to hinge forward so that your shoulders are in front of your hips and your handle is past your knees. And of course, otherwise you put the blade back into the water and then you can slide forward. And then the drive is also a leg press, and then the body opens and then the arm swings. So when I figured out or was willing to try doing a squat clean on the rowing machine with the double hip hinge, suddenly I'm like, oh, now you're at the front of the catch and it feels really easy, and now I don't know what to do because I didn't work so hard, right? You can't, I don't think you can train like to get strong to fall underneath the bar. It's a timing thing. It's more a timing thing than it's a muscle thing. Like you can deadlift all you want and you can get maybe stronger, better numbers, but if you don't have the timing to fall underneath the bar, fall, jump, explode, whatever that word is, then it doesn't matter how strong you are, right? And that's why the Olympic lifting is part of the Olympics and other events are not. It's a highly skilled technical movement. So I'm like, oh, but this is starting to feel really good and really powerful. Because not only does it, for me to think that I need to come underneath the bar or I need to load the hips quicker, also gives me a stronger hip opening. So I need to accelerate the back end more, because if I don't accelerate that enough, I won't be able to close quickly enough. And that's what I want. I want a strong acceleration at the back end of the stroke. So if you watch me rowing, depends on if I do full pressure, if I'm going for max power, I will sometimes pull the handle up quite high. So not quite collarbone, but pretty close. It's not a pull with the handle, right? It's a hip drive and the handle just guides it. So now when I have a really strong hip drive and I can accelerate and I can get the handle to move and it comes to me, it makes my stroke longer as well. If you look at the three things that gives you speed in the boat, it's the stroke rate. If you row mostly a higher stroke rate than something low, you'll go faster. The power, if I row full pressure or half pressure, and then the stroke length. So at the front end, that's why tall people usually make better row, because I can stick my arms out further. I can slide longer forward, and hopefully I can get the blade back in. But then if I also have a long pull, which of course works on the ergo, you won't be able to do it in the boat. But on the rowing machine, you just, what is your time? Or what is your split? Nobody cares so much about what technique you rode. So it started to work really well, the double hip explosion. And that also gives me time on the recovery on the slide. So if you look at the rowing machine, it's at a slight angle. So you also don't want to necessarily be pulling yourself forward. So if there's something for free, why don't you take it? So you get double hip hinge. With the hip hinge, you also load the hips like you would load a bow. So that when you're at the front end and you get suspension between your feet and your hands, you're not necessarily using muscle, but you're using the tension that you have loaded at the back end before you started sliding. Are you keeping up, Dave?
I'm waiting for Mike to give his experience because he was doing this before me, and I have a specific question. Because go ahead, Mike. I want you to give your experience with this double hinge before I give mine.
Okay, so hold on before Mike goes. Yes, Matthew. So Dave, when you asked me to come and coach at the Power Monkey Camp, I was like really excited, because people's lives are going to change when they want to learn about rowing. Nobody really wants to learn about rowing. You want to do the cool stuff like handstand push-ups and muscle ups and all the party tricks. Rowing, boring. And I completely agree with that. It's like same thing, hour after hour. So Dave said, like, all right, you have 2 hours. I'm like, Dave, it's impossible. I can't teach people how to row. Do you know in what shape they come to me? It's disaster. They have all these bad habits from either not rowing or finding a 2-minute clip on YouTube. It's disaster. Dave's like, you've got 2 hours. And Dave, I need more. We've got 2 hours. Dave, I can't do 2 hours. Dave says you have 2 hours. So there you go. So then I had to really find a hook. It's like, how can I teach CrossFit people that deadlift, squat, bar muscle up, pull up the whole time? And my thing was the Olympic lift. Also, English not being my first language, I have to find different ways in how to communicate with people. And for me, I think the more I coach now, the more I realize how much of an effect it had on me and on the coaching style, coaching in a second language, and how to engage and speak to people and how to make them remember things. All right.
You also draw on people, use kind of hieroglyphics, and you draw on participants. So that's another coaching language that you've learned along the way. We always know who worked with Rika when you look at someone's shins and you notice smiley or frowning faces depending on how you rode.
Yeah, Rika is the human graffiti artist at all sessions. It's pretty awesome.
I need to up my game. It's the same thing for the last how many years now?
I think, yeah, you gotta, instead of like markers and things, I think we need to get some real like maybe tribal ink that you start using on people.
And then we call it a fancy African name, and then
there we go. If we get anything in Afrikaans, it's gonna sound cooler. But so yep. Yeah, so Dave and Rika, to bring in, I guess, the Olympic lifter perspective on things, or for the listeners maybe to connect some dots. One, you have to come work with Rika when we're all together again. That'll be the easiest thing, or sign up to one of her classes so she can actually get some in-person time with you. But the cool thing with this like kind of double hip movement, or like extension to then going under the bar and weightlifting, and with what Rika's doing on the erg, it's like the oxymoron of weightlifting is jump down. Like, how do you jump down? And it's this ability to feel effortless and change direction. And I think that's what probably myself, when I would get on a rower, I would force a lot of things that I would never want people to force when they're moving a barbell. So like, I would want to move faster, so I would just try to move faster. But when I'm teaching somebody how to snatch or clean and they say, I want to move faster, I don't tell them to move faster. I usually tell them to slow down, be more aware of specific positions, what to think about at a certain time, and then maybe where to have a more aggressive action. So I think for a lot of, especially CrossFit athletes, when Rika is able to explain how to be more aggressive with your hips, to then almost make the finish more natural, and it kind of elongates your pull without trying, all of a sudden now your stroke rate is maybe not faster, but the amount of power that you're delivering through the erg is much, much more. So for me, it was, it was really, really interesting to feel more at home on the rower, because obviously I have years of touching a barbell. So that application, instead of like the traditional, rowing is like a deadlift, keep your back flat, do like a deadlift, and then kind of go from there. It was making it a little bit more complex, but more sensical.
Well, also you have that movement pattern already.
Yeah.
You're not, I think one of the big things when people try to go faster is they take the stroke rate up. So they row a higher stroke rate, they don't necessarily go faster, but they kick the footboard harder. So that's why I make fun of myself. So when I snatch and I now go for a heavy snatch, I freak myself out. So it's like, oh, it's so much heavier, you have to pull so much harder. So I just smack myself in the kneecaps. And it's like, well, it's a common technique fault, right? You can't rip it off the ground, because then there's nothing left for the hips. So that's kind of the same with the rowing, except a little bit more difficult, because you have to connect to the wheel that's spinning. So you need a little bit of timing and preparation even before you can start gathering it through the legs.
All right, I'll give my my perspective from the gymnastics side of things. The first thing that I've always struggled with, and this with my Olympic lifts as well, is it's upper body dominant. Gymnastics, we're all about using where our strength is, and it's not in our lower half, at least not with me. So one of the things that, Rika, you imparted was just how I'm holding onto the handle. Doing kind of full death grip. One of the things, we're teaching thumb wrapped around, nice full grip on it. And when I'm holding that intensely on the handle, it kind of forces me to think more of an upper body pull and anticipate a pull that needs to be a little bit more patient and focus on the timing. So by easing up a little bit and just kind of hanging on more lightly on the grip, it allowed me to relax my upper body and to allow my lower half to be first before I started to pull. So the simplest of changes in terms of just the grip allowed me to make sure that I was allowing the sequence of events to happen a little bit more in line with what you were recommending. So that was a very small change that I think had a big impact in terms of my timing. Would you say that's correct in terms of how you want to hang onto the handle?
Yes, and that originally came to me more from being a sculler on the water. So when you do sweep rowing, the handle is a lot fatter, and there is a lot more wrist movement. But because you have two hands on one handle, you can play between the two hands. But in sculling, the grips are quite a lot thinner, and the squaring and the feathering of the blades, because on a much smaller boat. So my boat is 8.1 meters long and about 27 centimeters wide. So you don't sit in the boat, you sit on top of the boat and kind of hang over. So the boat also weighs about 13, 14 kilos. So then in the water, if you only want to roll the fingers so that you always have a flat wrist. So if you're going to claw on, at some point your forearms are going to cramp up and you lose a lot of feeling with when the blade enters the water. And that's also the same what I then brought onto the machine. And people quite often comment like, oh, because she's a water rower, it doesn't matter. But even if you're not a water rower, why wouldn't you do something that will benefit you on the water and on the machine? So if you relax the grip, it will get you a stronger wrist position, it will give you a stronger elbow position, a stronger head, shoulder position, and then the head position, which then you can breathe better. And it's just a much cleaner line all the way through the catch. If you hold the handle lightly in the fingers, your body will not allow you to kick too hard at the front end because the hand you will let go. But towards the back end, when the hips come, I think because of all the joints are now bent, it's very seldom that, if ever, that you'll let go of the angle in the front. So that is quite often what I tell people. If I can't get them still, that the upper body is going, one of the changes that I make is I make them put only two fingers on the top. And then the body's like, okay, I really need to work much better with my timing. Because even though it's rowing on the machine and not on the water, you still need to connect to the wheel. The wheel is spinning. I know a lot of people say, oh, it doesn't matter, you just go in and out. But if the handle comes in and out at the same spot, there is a bit of a no man's zone. And then suddenly you connect. You want a very gentle connection and then a suspension of the body weight onto the fingers and onto the toes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was noticeable for me, and I haven't tried the two-finger technique. I'll definitely work on different grips in terms of how I'm hanging onto the handle. But for me, that allowed me to take some of the upper body out of the equation, which has always been a big struggle for me as an upper body athlete. Secondarily, what happens at the end of the opening of the hip position, and you touched on it briefly, but it was an important piece to me in terms of this new technique of what happens. Almost like a reaction. It's almost like a snapping of a bow or like a pulling back of a slingshot when you go from the end of your pull into the return. You're saying that, let gravity kind of pull you in, this kind of getting underneath the bar. But for me, I feel like if I'm connecting it to a gymnastics movement, I feel a very extreme hollow position. Like I get to an open hip and feel like if my hollow is intact, it'll allow me to whip back into that next repetition a little bit more effectively. So one of the things that I've always loved about Power Monkey is our ability to see where the connection points are between each of our specialties. And, you've done that really well with weightlifting, being able to say, what does a stroke look like? Not so much like a deadlift, but more like a squat clean. And for me, I feel that hollow position to be very important at the end of what you've been teaching on that stroke.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a weak hollow, I feel like it's going to create a disconnect between on your return. It's going to create a laxity in your ability to kind of create what you've been calling this strong connection into the return of your pull. So I'm curious from your perspective, if you've ever felt like hollow is important at the end of that pull, especially with you saying how high you pull and how far you're leaning back, whether or not that's an area that you emphasize at all.
Yes. So would you say that the hollow position is connection from the fingers to the toes?
At its highest level, yes. At its highest level, yes.
Yeah. So for me, the only thing is that the hollow position is not with the arms over here. The hollow position is now with the arms.
Right, but I'm saying the hollow in terms of lower back positioning.
Yes. Yeah. So, but it is a connection from the feet all the way through the toes.
Yeah.
So we do see it. Like at the finish, you still want to be driving off the footboard. And so I've also brought in, people often talk about the triple connection or the triple extension, with the ankle, the knee, and the hip. Yep. I bring the big toe in there as well, especially at the front end of the stroke, because you come so far onto the big toe and the ball of the foot. But also on the back end, you need to keep pressing off the footboard. If your foot comes off and you start hanging on that strap, your hollow body position is also kind of non-existent because you've lost the connection. Hanging on the strap is not such a good idea, especially if you want to go running or box jumping afterwards, because you tire out that front of the shin. So it is connection all the way from the footboard, from the toes, running through the hips, because sometimes the pelvis tucks even more, so it's too much and you don't have hollow position, or people are not too strong enough, and the only way that they can stop them is by throwing a hip joint or a spinal joint, and they flip the pelvis the other way. So to stop that, and I think that's kind of where the hollow body rock comes in. If you can't rock, you don't really have good hollow body position, but the only way that people can get the shoulders and the feet off is by doing a big arch in the lower back. So you see that often. It's brutal on the spinal health when you swing that far back and then you go into an arch. So it's like, well, either that or you crack your skull on the ground behind you because you don't have control in such a wide position.
I feel like we have a whole new series of movement, like picture posters that need to come out, because also, I mean, Dave, for a long time, I think, like I'll tell people they need to hit like a weightlifter's hollow when they finish, because so many people look at the finish of a snatch or a clean and they think that there's this big aggressive overarched lean back, but the best technicians actually have a flat lower back when the bar touches the hips and unweights. And then from there, they're in this like weightless hollow position, and the best ones don't ever arch back. They just then go under the bar. The people that are less efficient have a little bit more arch and a little bit more arch and a little bit more arch. And like you just said, Rika, that's detrimental on the spine. So weightlifters are historically very healthy athletes, but one thing that's happened over time is they've seen like small little stress fractures in the lower lumbar for weightlifters, because they would overarch all the time in the setup and then in the finish. And that was something that was really fun for me to connect with, like one of my flaws when I was a weightlifter, to then like universal shapes and body positions that Dave teaches within gymnastics. And then, the kind of the final connection there from a rowing standpoint is that hollow position. I think it can be applied in so many different ways depending on how you understand the technique of a skill.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit, Rika, right? Like where are the connection points between weightlifting and gymnastics? Where are the connection points between rowing and gymnastics? And I think there are. And I think, the more we dive into each other's sports and try things out, like you getting back into a handstand again, you hadn't been upside down in I don't know how many years. And you gave yourself a goal, which I'm going to make you stick to, of trying to get back into a 10-second handstand by the time next time we see you. And I love this ability for all of us to play around with each other's specialties, because we find out links. And I think it makes us all better coaches and better technicians. And it allows us within Power Monkey to understand some of the issues of the athletes that we come in contact with a little bit more. We say, hey, okay, if you're having trouble with this, why don't you try this technique over here? Because I think it might kind of pertain. And Mike, you do this really well with your athletes. You're imparting a lot of core work. You're imparting a lot of handstand work, which I think helps with overhead positioning. And I think that's one of the keys that allows Power Monkey to kind of stand out rather than a bunch of individuals who are great specialists in their own way. We show overlap, and it actually makes all of our sports a little bit better.
Dave, you used the magic word there from Rika too. We have to be willing to like play with these types of things. Like at the end of the day, if you're playing, you're kind of having fun with it, and then the magnitude of whether it's a success or a mistake is not always quite as high. So you can be a little more open-minded to try things. And I like that. So like when I'm working with you on something gymnastics, it has a playful feeling to it for me. And that's usually when I find a lot of like aha moments. And then the same with Rika, like she makes it almost gamified a little bit on the rower. Try this, try this, try this, try this. And it's like making all of us have that little bit of a childlike curiosity to just see what happens. Then it feels good and you're excited, and you try to repeat and mimic over and over and over again.
Absolutely.
Dave, I think it also ties in with what you said earlier. It's like we really care about the people that we work with. And there has been some times in my career where I told the person, like, I don't think we are a good match. Like, I can definitely teach you how to row, I can teach you how to back squat it, but I just don't think it's either not the right time or I'm not the right person for you. And then we need to move on. And then if you maybe don't find somebody in the next year, then contact me again and we see how that is. So for me, as I use rowing as something to help people get better contact with their bodies. But that's what I use. I can't teach them handstands. It's not my tool. I can show them this is how it looks upside down. I can show them ways how to not do it. But if I care about the person, I can say, look, I don't think rowing is the way for you. Go to Mike, because I think Mike is going to impart the knowledge of how to look after your body, how to get in touch more with your body, or how to get healthier through his skill of weightlifting. Or Mike's going to say, look, this person's also not for me, let's try Dave. And then Dave is, so it's almost kind of, we have the same goal, every one of us, we just have different tools. I use rowing and Dave use handstands, or, the balance beam pretty time anytime soon. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that allows us to be kind of unique in what we do. You're absolutely right, Rika. And we have a balance beam in our gym. If anyone wants to learn balance beam, my 6-year-old is ready to go to teach. So she's the professional balance beam in the house right now. I do want to mention that Simone Biles is coming back. If you guys have not noticed that, talk about balance beam and amazing gymnastics. Paris 2024 is around the corner, and we have Superstar coming back into the mix. So gymnastics is going to be worth watching again leading up to Paris next summer. Rika, we've already taken up a lot of your time, and we know it's getting late over there. I think you're in the same time zone as Mike. Is that right? Or are you guys just an hour apart from each other?
No, we're the same. We're one in the same
time zone.
Always.
Amazing. Well, I know it's your winter, and you got a couple days of sunshine with us in Crete, so hopefully you're able to stay warm being down there, and that we get to see you again soon. I know we've put some things in motion to potentially come and see you in Cape Town in the not so distant future, so hopefully we can make that happen. But before we get you out of here, we have a couple last minute quick questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, it's one of them. Right. What is the date? What is the date for Cape Town? Just kidding.
Yeah. all former and aspiring Power Monkey retreaters. Yeah, just stay tuned. We're working on some very, very, very cool things. Maybe something for next year, and definitely something for 2025. So just keep your ears open.
Absolutely. Exciting news coming soon. First question, Rika. What sport or discipline do you prefer, weightlifting or gymnastics? The long pause.
Prefer for what?
Just listen to your heart, Rika. You don't, just be
Yeah, I know where
intuitive.
you're going with
Go
this.
with it.
No, Dave, I when I was um, in second or third grade, I signed up for the gymnastics club at school because I really wanted to do gymnastics. And then I started to get really tall and I have to move the mats and change the bridge. It is the bridge and the two bars like that. Yeah. And they're
Uneven
like,
bars, yeah.
look, honey, this is just not for you. And I would do a cartwheel and I would cartwheel off the balance beam because the other girls fitted differently. So I'm going to choose gymnastics because it was probably my first original sport that I fell in love with.
And where's the celebration
I was not
horn?
expecting that win.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that one at all. Thank you, Rika, for that unexpected point in my corner. Amazing. Moving on to question number 2. Anyone that you think would be great for us to have on the podcast? Someone that you think would be a good interview for us?
That was a trick question because a lot of people are like, oh, they've already been on the podcast. I should probably go and listen to them. I think you should also have a search button so I can go and search much easier than to scroll through all the
Jordan,
pages and to see. Yeah, come on, Jordan. So I didn't scroll through all the pages, but something that I'm really interested at the moment, and also worked kind of through lockdown, was really getting to have a relationship with my food / the farmer. So suddenly, in Cape Town, it's a massive tourist industry. All the good meat, the eggs, the bacon get shipped off to all the restaurants and to the hotels. And suddenly, you could get all the good eggs, all the good meat, bacon for a reasonable price because there were no tourists. So now you have to kind of arm wrestle to get your hands on good bacon. So I really started getting a relationship with the farmers. I could go and pick up my meat. I can see the cows walking around. I can see the chickens. I've gone on a couple of farm tours, learning more about it. I also signed up for a regenerative agriculture course. So, but it feels to me like the two different worlds, the fitness world and the food world, is still kind of separated. So when I went to the regenerative agriculture farming, it was mostly Afrikaans people, Afrikaans farmers, call them boere. Khaki shorts, because it was kind of chilly. You can see outside, and they like shake. They put their hands on, they shake it, and I kind of jump up and down with it as they shake, and they're like, "Hello, en waar boer julle?" It's like, "Hello, and where do you farm?" And well, first, there's no julle, there's no us, it's just me. And I don't farm at all. I know nothing about farming. And it was so interesting being in a course where there's nobody that's even wearing a fitness shoe, a fitness shirt. Like, I don't think people even know what the gym is. They're all outside. And then their passion is really regenerative agriculture and how to look after the land more. And my first introduction to grass-fed beef was through a CrossFit gym. So I'm like, how would those two worlds look if they start to getting a little bit closer? So I don't know if you've had somebody on the podcast like that, because I sometimes feel
We have
you have
not.
your protein powder mix and your electrolyte mix and this. And do you know where it comes from? Do you know the processes that it goes from? I'm very lucky that I can stroll across the dome wall here and I get eggs, or I drive when I come from work on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from Cape Town. I go and pick up my meat and my eggs, and I have a chat to the farmer and we talk about what's going on. Yeah, so that's kind of my journey. What's going on with food and how to look after it, and we, I feel there's a massive push for non-meat alternatives. So I'm like, well, I don't really care if you're vegan, vegetarian, or carnivore, but what is the relationship with food? And I feel we've lost that quite a bit. We've lost the connection, I think, also with our bodies, but also with the land and the environment that we live in. So a farmer.
I love that.
A farmer
we
into
got to
fitness.
figure out that. Yeah, we got to figure out how we can get that connection.
farm,
Maybe
right.
through some of one of our sponsors, Froning Farms, things like that. Maybe we can get a connection through one of our camp sponsors. But I don't know if we've ever had Katie, Rosie Joe Meals on. She would be another one just to be able to talk about how she sources and her connection and her relationship with the farmers that she works with down in Texas. That might be another good one. Thank you for that suggestion, Rika. I think we can definitely dive a little deeper into the connection between our food side of things as well. Last question. I don't know if you're a big movie TV person, but if there's a TV show or movie you've seen recently or a book that you recommend our listeners checking out.
Book, obviously, Natural Born Heroes, because Crete and the retreat on there. It's probably one of the books.
I was talking chatting with Kelly Surratt the other day too, and he mentioned that book as being one of his favorites as well. So that book came up twice this week. So definitely got to put it on the list as not just because of the Crete, but the Crete connection, but also a very worthy book.
Exactly. Movie. I like Blacklist because I like James Spader's voice.
All right.
That's kind of why. That's
we
why
have not had Blacklist. I love it. We got to add that to the list of viewing materials.
Just out of my ignorance, the book, it's not Natural Born Heroes, is it? It's Natural Born Heroes. No joke. I just Googled Natural Born Heroes. I was like, oh, is this really like a book that I haven't read yet?
Natural Born Heroes.
And then all that came up was Natural Born Grillers. And then there's this, because I'm in Germany, there's like all these different like German things. And then, so I'm going to start my own like blog or something called Natural Born Heroes.
Natural Born Heroes, like Meatball Hero. So it's a big sandwich too. Yes.
That can work.
Rika, thank you so much. We love you. We are also fortunate to have had you out in Crete with us and to be able to connect again after so many years apart. Thank you for your incredible words of wisdom and teaching all of us how to become better at sitting on that rower and enjoying it a little bit more than I think all of us did before we met you. Any parting words, and where can people find you if they want to follow up with things in Rika's world?
Where can they find me? You'll eventually find me on a Facebook Messenger or Instagram Messenger if you want to work with me. I'm at the moment I mostly do individual work. I sometimes have classes that kind of come and go, online run classes. At the moment I just take on clients as individuals. I think there was one of the retreaters, one of the people at the retreat that got made fun of her social media post. I think I'm even more of a spy than her.
Sarah and Rika.
What's your Instagram handle? What's your Instagram handle?
Rika S. Rika S08.
Okay, Rika's 08. Perfect.
Yeah. And Dave, you're supposed to ask, what does the S stand for? Because it's not in your name.
What does the S stand for, Rika?
The S stands for Suave, which was my university nickname. So when
Rika
I came
Suave.
to the States, I didn't speak much English. I had an incredibly strong accent. Apparently, I still do because euros and euros sound the same.
No, I thought the same from Dave and everybody. That wasn't you, Rika. That's just my Greek bias of our favorite Euro shop that's next to us. Yeah.
So when I said my name was Rika, they thought it was Rico, like some
Rico
Spanish
Suave.
dude with the dreadlocks. And because people struggled to pronounce my name, I just became Suave. And then people, if they made me, they start singing the song. Apparently there was a song as well.
You're dating yourself now, Rika. Now you're letting everyone know when you were in college. So we won't say exactly when Rico Suave was #1 hit.
Yeah, still don't know the hit. But anyway, last words of wisdom. Now I think we've cleaned it all out, huh? I think we've done it.
I think so. I think we probably have another podcast in us to catch up with a little bit more of the amazingness that is going on in your life. We didn't even touch on some of the other incredibly interesting things that you have going on in Cape Town, but we'll save that for podcast number 2.
Yep. And I'll also just show you my dog, Hector.
Yeah, he's awake.
There we go.
Hey, buddy. Beautiful dog there. We'll make sure that we get a picture that we put up with the podcast so everyone can see the beautiful dog.
Exactly. Also one of the wonderful things in Cape Town. All right. Well, Dave, Mike, Jordan, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rika. We will see you again soon, and hopefully in person, but definitely virtually. For all of our listeners out there, please be sure to head over to powermonkeyfitness.com for services and upcoming events. As Mike said, we do have some interesting and fun things on the agenda very soon that we're going to be announcing. Please check out our Instagram pages for regular teaching and technical content at Power Monkey Fitness, at Dave Durante, and at Mike Service. On behalf of Power Monkey Fitness, we're your hosts. I'm Dave Durante with my co-host Mike Service. And until next time, thank you all for listening.